Cybernation Uncensored.
And we're live. Hello, choombas. This is your friendly Cybersmily, out to do another episode of Tales from the Forlorn Dopes. Again, my name is Cybersmily, and I have my co-host here.
Hello, greetings programs. I am Wisdom. I am here to talk some Cyberpunk with my pal Cybersmily.
Yeah, so
today.
Yeah, if you want to tell everybody what's happening today.
Oh yeah, no. Today we're going to be reviewing Solo of Fortune 1 and 2. Plus, we're going to talk about some general Cyberpunk 2020 news and just genre news. As always, we're going to rant at you and spend significant amounts of time vacillating between subjects and going on wild tangents. So, and strap in and enjoy.
Yeah, so first off, shall we talk about an announcement from RTG?
It's a good announcement.
So, apparently they are back from Gen Con and gave us a little bit of a preview of things that are coming our way and what happened at Gen Con. I would like to congratulate them on Haunted West game system.
Yeah.
One in any. That's always a good thing.
While they were at Gen Con, they released Tales from the Red. That
they did.
That's pretty exciting.
Got a copy of it. Still reading through it.
Oh my.
There was, of course, some problems with Mike. I'm afraid he wasn't feeling too well. I wish him the best and hope he's on his way to recovery of whatever illness he might have had to mess Gen Con. Also, Monster Fight Club showed off some of the combat zone stuff as well as playtesting. I'm still waiting for my package to come in the mail, though.
You and me both, brother. You and me both. And, of course, the really exciting news is that they gave a little preview of what to expect from Black Chrome.
Yes. Some stuff that's being brought over from 2020. Like the Sovietware. Which is fun stuff. Yeah,
we got cyber digits, like individual fingers that on quick change mounts. Always love those.
Yeah.
Always meant to have a character who just like had a belt full of fingers. There was never I could never figure out enough individual fingers for it to make sense. But like a bandolier of fingers always seemed kind of cool to me.
And I do appreciate the cheap cyber eye implants in which ads continue to pop up.
Yeah, that's pure cyberpunk right there. That is some brilliance. They're giving examples of new guns, including like an anti-Borg handgun and new vehicles. So it's gonna look like a good old-fashioned Chromebook, apparently.
Yeah. So I know that Chrome Black has been in the works since 2013, before Red rules were even thought about.
Oh yeah. I mean, I remember Mike coming on the 2077 forums, and he announced it there way back, before Yeah, like you said, 2013, when everything was still up in the dark and nobody knew what to expect from anything. So yeah, we've been waiting on this one for a while.
Yeah. Capricious Nature, it is. They just show one vehicle. I don't know if they're coming up with actual vehicle rules. The EB wasn't designed for speed. I mean, so your rules might still be in place.
I was going to say, Capricious Nature is one of our regulars. He's one of our more ardent supporters, and he's, for the people listening at home, he's in the chat alongside us here today. He wrote a supplement for Red, Vehicles of the Red, and he's worried that it might become outdated, but I don't think it will. You may need to update things, pal, but that's the nature of homebrew source books, is they don't really become outdated. They just become classic.
Yep. Also, that they announced was the Danger Girl Dossier, which seems to me similar to Edgerunners Inc. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't want to run into copyright issues. Danger Gal, not Danger Girl.
Oh.
Danger Girl is a 90s comic.
Really? Oh, that's where.
Yeah. It was basically like a cross between Charlie's Angels and Tomb Raider. In fact, their first story arc was, I don't know if you've ever seen Jackie Chan's Armor of God, but it's that exact storyline.
Okay. Yeah, but I remember. So I was in a game with Mike back in around 2014ish, and he was talking about Chrome Black back then. He was running a game with Michiko, and she casually called herself Danger Girl. I could have sworn it was Action Girl, but then again, it's been what, almost 10 years since that time, so my memory isn't as great as it used to be. But yeah, so that's interesting. I mean, it seems like it's an Edgerunner Incorporated spin-off. Maybe we'll see some little quick hooks in the book as well.
That's the vibe I was getting from it. And R. Talsorian, especially with the Cyberpunk line, they've never been afraid to pay homage to their inspirations. So it's all good.
Yep. So that's what Talsorian's all about. So maybe we'll see Chrome Black sooner than we think. I know there was some dialogue about this posting in, I think, our Talsorian's Discord, or maybe someone else's Discord, in which someone attended the seminar that James Hunt and the rest of RTG was running, and supposedly there was mention that James Hunt was had some notes around full body conversions, but
I mean, that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, so there's a little bit of a buzz for that, because we all love our Borgs, unless you're at the receiving end of one.
Yeah, they're definitely a part of the world, and it was kind of weird for their absence in Red. Maybe not as playable characters, but certainly as, something you could run into. I mean, they should be playable characters, but doing so, even with, as always, it kind of creates a next level campaign. I'm very curious to see how they're going to do that, because most characters are almost unkillable in Red anyway.
Yeah.
What with the whole... Yeah, well...
The hit points. Yeah.
Hit points and 30-second trauma team response, and... yeah. but it'll be very interesting to see how they incorporate that into Red. And I know you only get to see, even in 2077, the only true full Borg you ever really run across is Atom Smasher. But I mean, they're out there.
That they are. And I know with third edition,
And really, who's to say that? Go ahead.
In third edition, there was, the whole alt cult of full body conversions floating around.
Yeah. I mean, who's to say people like Lizzie Wizzy aren't full conversions? I mean, they'd be like cheap FBC, the Mike Adda produced fan source book type full conversions. But I mean, at what point? That's always the question. At what point of replacement do you become full conversion? As opposed to stop being classified as meat. I mean, metallic skin and all that.
Right.
Yeah, who really knows?
Yeah, so in other Cyberpunk news, we're still waiting on edgerunners, which should be coming out next month. I think in like 3 weeks. Maybe less, maybe more. 1, 2, 3, a little more. So that's going to be fun. Westworld Season 4 just wrapped. I'm not going to spoil anything because Wisdom here is only on Season 2. So
I had to restart from the beginning, and it's all good.
Not going to divulge anything. I did catch the episode of Moonhaven for free on Amazon, so it was only the first episode. I wasn't able to see the the rest of them, but it kind of has a cyberpunk vibe. I think it's a little more far future than cyberpunk, but I think there might be some goodness in there to go and check out.
I mean, there's several shows on the horizon that haven't quite materialized yet that are looking great. They're still talking about a Dread series.
I know.
I don't know if that'll ever actually materialize. It's not necessarily cyberpunk, more like it's post-apocalypse, but the pictures that are coming out from Furiosa look fantastic to me.
Yeah.
Chris Helmsworth is apparently going to be playing a character called Dr. Dementis. He's got some weird looking facial hair, but other than that, everything I'm seeing looks pretty good. I guess it's supposed to be about how Furiosa, the Charlize Theron character from Fury Road, and Morton Joe get to where they are in that movie. So I'm very much looking forward to that.
Yeah, that's true. The other thing is, and I still don't hear anything about a release date for the Peripheral, which is a William Gibson novel that they created a TV series that supposedly they finished filming or principal filming at the end of last year. So I assume that they were doing post-production, but again, don't know too much about where they're at with that and whether or not it's coming out, or when it's coming out, or if it's coming out.
Yeah, it's always weird that when you find out something's like it seems like it would be, coming out real soon, but everything goes quiet. That's always frustrating.
Yeah.
Especially when it's something as exciting as that.
Yeah, because I know Neuromancer has always been talked about and supposedly in pre-production, and then years go by and find out that the whole project was scrapped.
It's been scrapped so many times.
I know.
You'd think they'd just put out an animated film. You'd think that would solve the budget issues.
True.
But I mean, some people just, or some projects just don't ever really seem to materialize.
Yeah, well, I think it also has to do with IP, and if an
Oh yeah, of course.
creator creates a story, a company will come in, buy the rights, do nothing with the rights for 10, 20 years, as long as they keep on holding them. And depending upon the contract, right, with that author or creator, if they don't if they don't stipulate, oh yeah, you have five years to do something with this, or else I'm shopping it around to another company. If they're not that smart, that means they'll hold on to the license indefinitely. Sort of like how there's a couple instances of it. One would be Harmony Gold, and
Yeah.
what they did.
I mean, they pay so much for these properties, and they never do anything. But they don't want to lose the properties, so they just tend to do the minimal amount of work required to keep the properties. So you never see a movie materialize. It's like Spider-Man, dude. That movie, Spider-Man, was in development from like 4 different companies from like the late 80s on, and it wasn't until Sam Raimi that we actually saw something materialize. I mean, at one point, James Cameron was going to be putting it out. It's development hell.
Yeah.
I mean, we all know the story of the Fantastic Four movie, and that...
Which one? Roger Corman?
The Roger Corman one. It was made just to shelve.
Yeah, Cold Spider
So let's...
talks about Mountains of Madness and Guillermo
Oh,
del
yeah.
Toro. Speaking of Lovecraft, I'm actually going to be heading to Necromonicon over in Providence this weekend.
Oh, that sounds fun.
Yeah, it's a convention that's dedicated towards the weird, which Lovecraft and that type of genre is all based on. So it's a fun time. I've been there 3 times already, 4 times. It's a fun time. I mean, it's not a gaming convention. Yes, there are games there, but it's more a bit of, I would say the majority of it is more geared towards authors and writers of the genre.
Yeah, like horror fiction and stuff. That sounds pretty darn cool to me.
Yeah, so I'll let you know when I get back, and maybe there might be some cyberpunkish talk of Cthulhu and Cyberpunk. Maybe I should do a seminar on it. Well, speaking of things that I'm doing, so I just did a release today, prior to me going away, addressing some of the bugs on my site. A few things. I'm also still working on the character generator for Red. That is kind of going a little slow because I'm actually taking my time and really thinking out some of this stuff, because I some of the bugs I was fixing on the character generator for 2020, I'm like, oh man, why did I do it this way? So I definitely have learned from past experiences, and the spaghetti code that I created years ago. So hopefully the Red thing is going to be a little bit better and a little more tighter, in, at least code-wise. Besides that, I'm actually working on a new campaign, because my campaign I've been running for 2 years just ended about 3 weeks ago. No one died, though I tried. I actually threw a Borg after them, and after they survived the Borg, limping away, they were like, yeah, we're heading to the ground. We're not dealing with this anymore. So I kind of scared the characters into not doing the mission anymore.
That's the nature of Cyberpunk. You either You either make it and retire, you go into hiding, or you die. There's not really any middle ground between the three.
Precious, I don't want to kill them. Making them run away in terrified dread is so much more satisfying. Because killing, you just kill them. Filling them with dread and going after their friends and families, and they don't know who's coming after them because they've made so many enemies, it's just more delicious. So with that ended, I'm kind of taking a break from running. So I have a couple of my players doing some other different games while I prepare for my next campaign, which I'm actually going to be doing a space campaign. And I shared a link with Wisdom over here on what I'm fleshing out, and it's kind of like his source books and trying to use them as inspiration.
Your development of this campaign with great interest. It looks like it's going to be very badass.
Yeah. So
you are. I mean, it's what I would expect from a space campaign. What I would want from a space campaign, not what I would necessarily expect, but what I would want. And yeah, every time you post something new about it, I'm like, ooh, that's interesting.
Yeah, and which I'm actually doing a bit of research in space, and I've always been fascinated by it, but I'm actually doing a little more research, and oh, wait a minute. Lunar colonies aren't the greatest thing to do, especially for humans, because the gravity is only 1/6, and God only knows what that's going to do to a human body. So I'm not sure how I'm going to approach those.
I mean, we talk about hostile environments, but I mean, literally everything in space is hostile. The slightest mistake will absolutely kill you and everyone you love. It's a nerve-wracking environment.
And on top of that, you have corporations trying to be the overlords and the oppressors of the universe.
It's the truth. Yeah, I think that covers the news, unless there was anything else you wanted to mention.
I think so. I think we can kind of get started with tonight's topic, which is Solo of Fortune. And the two books.
Yeah, we're going to be covering both 1 and 2. I know this is a fan favorite source book, so hopefully we'll do them justice for people.
Yeah, so let's get started. So Solo of Fortune, the first one, was actually written for Cyberpunk 2013. So it's a bit of a predate, and it's one of the few supplements for 2013.
It along with Rocker Boy, Chromebook, and I think there was one other.
Near Orbit?
Near Orbit, that's the one.
Was I think the original Eurosource was also kind of like at the tail end of 2013.
Well, Eurosource and Near Orbit. Yeah. Huh. I never actually gave it all that much thought because I never see all the books together as the 2013 books. But yeah, they in the brief amount of time before 2020 released, they put out a hefty amount of material.
That they did. So this book has multiple authors. You have Colin Fisk, Mike Pondsmith, Will Moss, who is a well-known other contributor and author, David Fryland, Scott Ruggles, and Derek Quintanar. I always screw up mentioning his name. Quintanar.
Yeah, something like that.
Quintanar. Yes.
I've never actually heard his name pronounced before, so.
Yeah, I'm not good at pronouncing words that I see. I think it has something to do with a little minor form of dyslexia I have. So, anyways, we get into it, and of course, Mike Pondsmith does a foreword on what the book is, why it's there. It's kind of a bit of a solo of, no, it's actually based on Soldier of Fortune, which is was kind of a mercenary
magazine of
yeah.
I remember as a 12-year-old kid thinking this is the coolest magazine ever. As an adult, I'm all like, man, that's kind of cringy. That's something that could have only really happened in the 80s.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm replying to Capricious.
The heyday of Guns and Ammo magazine.
Yep.
Shit like that.
Well, I think it's still the heyday, at least in the U.S. I don't think we've ever lost our interest in guns.
No, but that whole wanting to feel dangerous through the power of magazine, that was just so prevalent in the 80s.
Printed word and all that.
I mean, you had Solo of Fortune, and you had all the myriad of martial arts magazines, and all of them about ninjas and shit. These are 80s things that couldn't have really existed at any other time with the popularity that they enjoyed.
Yeah. So, I would say 80% of this is really fluff, from a source book point of view.
Yeah, it was the early days of the franchise, and they were still the fluff was there, and they were still fleshing out exactly what they wanted to do with the system. You can kind of see that with this book. I like the format. I like the way they set it up as a magazine. Whereas in later source books, they tried to emulate data terms and what you would see on a computer screen. With this, they're straight going for that magazine feel, and I don't know. In some cases, it almost feels weird when you see the stats for things because the fluff is so very heavy and prevalent.
Right.
The art in this book, though, just take a brief aside. It's very. It's very in tune with what you would see in Cyberpunk 2020 when it comes out. Mike Pondsmith does some of the art in this one as well. Sam Liu, Scott Ruggles, Rob Caswell. This is where you get a lot of the Nagel-inspired art that I really, really dig. That's highly prevalent throughout the book.
Yep. Yes. And again, I think Mike is more labeled as an artist for his maps. I have a feeling that was it.
I get that too. More like the graphic design type stuff as opposed to one of these days we'll have to find out what art he did just to be sure. But I'm thinking it's more charts and or not chart diagrams and whatnot.
Yep. All right. So the first section, of course, is basically as a format of any magazine. You have the beginning section of readership writing in and asking questions, and the editor, of course, responding to all of them. Some of them are pretty funny.
Your mailroom section, it's good stuff. I like this.
And some of the debates they have, around the nines. which is good. And the other thing is you're going to find most of the rules and gear are going to be in the advertisements throughout this book. So you're not really going to find any central location that has all the items. It's kind of splashed around throughout it. And some of the ads are really small, and you would actually miss.
They're
the little things.
Anytime you read the reference book and it says Solo of Fortune, you're just all like, oh no, search the whole just for a little itty bitty blurb somewhere.
Yep.
But it's good fun, and I like the way they do it. I would have liked to have seen more books put out like this, to be honest. Reader mail and all. It feels very satire, kind of in line with. I don't want to say like in line with Judge Dredd necessarily, but it kind of gives off that feel where. Yeah, I don't really know how to explain what I'm trying to say, but it definitely has like a high satire count.
Yep. Yeah, so then you move on and you get into the first story, which is a little bit of fluff around the Southam War and really getting into the mentality of the Solos, who I think from the point of view of Cyberpunk was always viewed that Solos are kind of ex-soldiers coming back from war, trying to, work out their issues and the craziness that happened during those two wars. So it's a good article. Again, no real rules around it. There is, of course, following that article, the gun modifications, which I think is the first step on how to modify your guns and some of the ways in which you can improve a gun.
The little fully chipped thing it's another ad, and it's the first time in Cyberpunk in the franchise that you really see gun modification and anything beyond just straight basic stats.
Yep.
As for the South American War stuff, I can't tell you how useful this was in fueling my imagination for when I wrote out the fan source book, Conflict South America. Like there is so little information about such a pivotal event in the Cyberpunk 2020 lore. I had to have more, even if I had to create it myself. And this is where this article was the basis of all that.
Yeah, I can see that. And again, I think you get into that mentality of like, there's just so much I want to do, so little time to do it, And oftentimes you get, and again, I'm sure this is why some game systems don't do everything that they could possibly do. Because Cyberpunk, I think, has so much potential in various areas that were never really covered.
And they just make brief mentions of these concepts that just really grabbed hold of my imagination, like the long walk, like that. They never really detailed any of it. They just kind of mentioned what it was, and you're just like, man, I want to know so much more about that. And they're not ever going to give it to me. So I had two choices. I could make it up myself or just forget about it. I made it myself.
Well, the other thing is, some of it is, okay, you have Solo of Fortune that mentioned a little of it. You have, I think, Rocker Boy,
Home of the Brave, Rocker Boy.
So it's
Neo tribes. I mean, there were brief mentions, but there was no.
a consolidated
There wasn't
area.
enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So moving on to the next article, which is cyberpsychosis. It can happen to you. In which there's a detailed article around what it is, some of the warning signs you want to watch out for, how you can prevent it. Also, be aware that there might be certain cyberware that cause it to escalate very quickly, and
it's all fluff, but it's fluff told in a way that you can directly apply it to your game.
yeah,
As opposed to a lot of times when this kind of thing happened, where it gets all abstract and you're all like, "Well, that sounds really cool, but I don't know what to do with it." This is told in a way that you know what to do with it.
yep. And then there's also some game rules, which you can roll on a chart, roll a d10, and see what kind of cyberpsychosis it is, like from obsession, paranoia, delusions, hyperactivity, phobic, or schizophrenic, or just murderous rage. So, you probably should make a generator for that on the character sheet, but future will take care of that.
I like the attitude expressed in this book that in 2013 they're like, well, we can either remove all your cyberware or kill you, and those are the only two cures for cyberpsychosis. And I like how that softens up and expands over the course of the supplements that follow.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what I loved about Cyberpunk in and of itself, is that it expanded on concepts. At the start, they take all these hard line stances, and then as the line grows and the timeline, falls into place, they do expand on some of these ideas, and it becomes a much more fluid thing.
Yes. And Ionis, or DreamPod 9, with their, I forget if it's Grim Cyber Tales or Dark Metropolis, they actually had some very extensive cyberpsychosis, humanity loss rules that really allowed a player to kind of put the player really didn't have a choice on where he was putting his cyber or humanity loss into the various fields, but it went a little step further than just a simple chart like this.
Yeah, it expanded the concept greatly, and for many groups, it became the standard. Like Dark Metropolis, like the book was worth it just for that alone, for their views on cyberpsychosis and how they expanded the system for it.
I mean, I tried to use that system on some of my games, but my players were just, this is too much bookkeeping. I do not want to use, we don't want to use this. It's like, okay, fine, I get it. But I really like the rules.
Honestly, with my groups, outside of like when we very first started, they were all terrified of cyberpsychosis, so they tried to keep their cybernetics light. And if they did have to go heavy into cyber, like they were full blown flying to Switzerland for therapy and shit.
Yeah, that can get expensive if they're going all the way to Europe.
Oh Lord, it. I mean, at the time, at the point where they could afford like full conversions or the next best thing,
Yep.
the money wasn't really the issue for them.
True.
Either they had corporations footing the bill, or I don't want to say succeeding, but they had succeeded enough to where they could, if they could afford the cybernetics, they could afford the therapy that went along with them.
Right.
Otherwise, they were just meat on a table somewhere.
But yeah, it's to me, this is a good article to read Because I know there's been a lot of chatter on like what cyberpsychosis is and how you handle it in the community. And this is another source that you can kind of leverage and pull from. The next chapter is...
It's...
Go ahead.
I mean, it's like the nature of cyberpunk itself, like the genre itself. Like, is cyber psychosis something you include in your game? If so, what form does it take? It's just one of those endlessly debated topics.
Right.
And any little bit you can find to help flesh it out is always going to be a positive.
That it will. So the next chapter is focus on solos. This issue, the 6 types of solos. So again, we get more fluff around different types of solos in the world, how they work, whether they're bodyguards, cyber soldiers, and the various tasks they would have associated with them. And at the end of the article, it actually goes into the types and gives you some... I wouldn't say that they were full-blown roles, but they do kind of tell you what skills you should be focused on and what kind of equipment you should be looking at.
Yeah, it's... You can see where the attitude of, you don't have to be this... To be an effective solo, you don't have to be like Rambo walking around bristling with weapons and jacked to the max. Like, you can be the professional, like, bodyguard assassin type where, you just carry what's needed as per, and most of the time you're walking around trying to be stylish. I love the Euro solo. But for those games where Rambo is required, it's got that. And this is where you start to see, reactions to, if you show up looking like this, you're not going to get jobs with these people.
Yeah.
Because they want somebody who looks professional. They want somebody who's not going to draw attention to themselves. So right off the bat, I mean, we're talking 2013 era, like Cyberpunk 2013, not the year 2013, but right off the bat, like those tools that you will need to deal with the more problematic players who don't understand, it's not Dungeons and Dragons. Right off the bat, it's giving you those tools.
Right. And I think Cyberpunk is, at least for my players, they really were murder hobos. They had no place to live. They wore the cheapest stuff, unless it was armor. They didn't care about style over substance. They only cared about substance. And of course, they never really got good deals or were able to go into any high scale bars, or corporates usually would frown on them, like, why do I want to do business with you? You don't even have...
Yeah, they're hanging out in the seediest fucking solo bars because that's the only place that will let them in the door.
Yeah. And, what's your personal grooming? Oh, 0? Okay.
You got lice jumping off of you, buddy. What's wrong with you?
This chapter also had some additional vocabulary that you definitely can use.
I mean, that's, again, the early books, they were just full of this kind of stuff. Various slang and jargon to, help immerse yourself in the game. I don't know how closely everybody else's game, like how much use they got out of the slang and all that stuff. I know we tried to use it fairly heavily in the beginning, just to immerse ourselves, and we were also like wearing sunglasses at night and shit like that.
There's one term which I think is no longer politically correct.
I mean, you're going to run into that. It was a different era.
It was.
And what was... Yeah, I mean, I know the term you're talking about. I
Different
mean, I
kind
think it
of.
would actually probably still. I don't know if it would still fly or not. I know it's closer to what people would actually, like mercenaries would actually say, which is an indictment on the crowd as much as it is on the time.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, it's just one of those things.
it is. So again, this chapter really gives you some fluff on the different solo archetypes that players should really be aiming towards, and what corporations are also looking for when they hire them. Um, it has to do with the old Western movies, Capricious.
Yeah, yeah.
It's the closest I'm gonna
It,
go to that.
it, it's it's got a derogatory. I'll say it. The term that we're talking about is engine country, which it's not a very cool term.
No.
But again, in the late '80s, early '90s, it was just part of the jargon. Um, yeah, it probably wouldn't fly today,
Yeah.
and we'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
I don't want our viewers to be too confused. It's not horrible, but it definitely.
As a 16th Ojibwe, kind of starting to understand the meanings behind some of that stuff. And
Yeah.
yeah. Anyways, let's move on to Modern Street Gangs, the True Cyberpunks, which is the next chapter. This actually is an article that really gets into the gangs of the world and the various types, whether they're
This is the first time you. Go ahead.
they were starting to actually classify them, and you definitely see a lot of this being propagated into other source books like Wildside, Protect and Serve, Night City Source
Night
Book.
City.
Yep. So
I mean, and this is really the first time you see that breakdown where you can see that they're watching popular media, movies like The Warriors and all these other like high crime movies that were coming out at the time. What was that? Oh, the Charles Bronson movie.
Oh, Death Wish.
Death Wish, especially Death Wish 3. With you can just see where the basis of booster gangs and all that come into play, and poser gangs, and this is really the first glimpse you get into that world.
Yep. Or the real classic is Class of 1999.
Yep, that's I love that movie.
I did at the time. Now it's like, oh, oof. I used to watch stuff.
Well,
like
I
that.
mean, it's very much a product of its time, like so much of the '80s was,
True.
and the early '90s, and I mean, you take them for what they are. You get the inspiration from them that you can, even if the plot itself is a mess, or just the overall concept is just kind of a little too far out there for what's going on. You take your inspiration where you can.
Yep. Also in this chapter, besides just telling you about the different types of gangs, it also gives you an insight into the gang rank special ability and what it means for that. And I think this is probably more, especially for the time, one of the more fleshed out special abilities I have come across. Because it really goes into detail for 2-3 pages.
It actually surprised me a great deal that this didn't make it like a whole hog into the standard role list for 2020 when it came out. Because they really go into depth on gangs, gang life, and gangs as a character class.
Yeah, to the point where every 2 levels it has at least, it's one paragraph, but really I think these are multiple paragraphs for each rank.
They actually go more into detail with gang life and a gang as a character class than they do with any other role out there, really, except for fixers.
And nomads.
Yeah, and nomads.
The one good thing about this chapter also is it gives you kind of a couple ideas on how to run a gang campaign too, which is fun.
Yeah, I've run many of them, and this was always a good tool to base those campaigns off of.
And then, of course, at the end of the chapter, we have stats for some of the gang types that you can use in your game.
It's where you first see them. Like, we're gonna throw some posers at you. In this case, like the Kennedys.
Yep.
Posers have always been this weird hit or miss thing in the back of my head where I can see them being a thing, and as time has progressed and like cosplay has become this big thing, it's obviously become a little bit more like acceptable in the back of my head. But man, back in 1990, a bunch of dudes walking around biosculpted to look like Gilligan just seemed like such a ridiculously far-fetched idea that I had to laugh about it. And you see where they, like, if you read Judge Dredd or anything like that, you see where the ideas come from. But man, it would be so hard. It's so hard for me to take that seriously when the major threat is like the SpongeBob SquarePants gang. You just, what? What?
Well, it was like the bozos. No one really thought, oh, there's going to be a gang of bozos, and lo and behold, we have the juggalos who fit the bill.
Yeah. I think bozos were originally thrown out there as like a running joke for Mike's game or whoever's game that just kind of took on this life of its own because clowns are fucking terrifying.
Well, that and John Lee Gacy.
Yeah, John Wayne Gacy.
Wayne Gacy.
Plus, you had movies like Killer Clowns from Outer Space hitting the market, which gave everybody the visuals they needed.
Yep.
Yeah, clowns are fucking terrifying. For a whole lot of people. For me, they were nothing more than ever just like I found them tacky more than anything else. But like my mom was terrified of clowns.
Yeah, I don't appreciate them. I wouldn't say I'm terrified of them, but anyways, so we get into a full-page ad for a bunch of new cyberware, which of course made it into the Chromebooks. So at least some of them.
Yeah.
Was some of this from? No, this wasn't. Some of this wasn't from Interface.
No, this is too early. But this is the first time we get to see like modular cyber fingers. We were talking about that earlier. So yeah, that concept goes way, way back. I liked this site. Cookie cutters, they became standard issue for like all police forces in our game.
Oh, they became standard issue for all teams in my game that had cyberware or cyber guns.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, if you don't want to be shooting your buddies. The size, I like all this stuff is good. The seismic detector, the silencers, the nasal filter, like everything on this page is pure, like got heavy use in our games. Not just because it was some of the earliest cyber we got introduced to outside of the main book, but just because it's good stuff.
Yes, it was. So the next chapter is corporate extraction, and it kind of gets into a bit of a story on how a corporate extraction happens. Granted, there's not too many rules on this, but it's definitely some fluff that you can get inspired with for creating your game. First time chat. Let's do this, huh? And I know what that is. Anyways, it's a good read and definitely inspires you on how extractions can happen. Oftentimes, my players do it a little differently than this particular group. Yeah. Oh, you're reading Capricious'
Yeah, apparently Cap's Capricious Nature's mom, his best friend's mom, was the one who reported the smell from Gacy's house. That's insane. Remind me, Capricious, to tell you my story about Bob Berdella in Kansas City. That is a tale for another time.
Yeah, I don't have any good tales on that. I'm close misses with interesting people, I would say. Anyways, getting back on topic.
Yep, sorry.
So the next chapter is Love and Bullets from Moscow. This chapter is actually very short, one page, but it gives a little bit of insight into how, a little story from a Russian covert.
And again, this was one of the source books that I still have on the back burner eventually that I want to do is one more conflict source book detailing, Eastern Europe, the Soviet bloc and whatnot. And this is where I got the idea for that from.
Yeah. And I don't understand why they continued the article 40 pages later.
Because that's what magazines did back then, and I guess they're trying to emulate that. It does come across a little disjointed. They do that with a couple of things in the book, and it makes you feel like you're reading the magazine, but it would have been nice to just have the information all in one place.
Yeah, like, oh damn, I thought we had a full page ad for this page. All right, stick an article in here. What about the rest of the article? Put it in the back somewhere. We'll just tell them to jump pages. Then the next chapter, because we went to Russia, let's go into the Euro style, in which we really get into the European culture in the Angels. And if you don't know who the Angels are, they are like the elite of the solos. Like, American solos are crap, supposedly, compared to these guys.
Yeah, they really lean into the whole Euro solos are the best solos. I'm not really sure why this was such a thing, other than I guess James Bond movies. I'm not really sure where the idea that Euro solos are any better than solos from anywhere else.
Well, I think the concept was that America is pretty much a third world country at this point. It's just the only reason why we're considered first world in the Cyberpunk universe is because we have an army, a military that still is the world-leading military of the world. So, however, I think cultural-wise, America has just gone to shit, and the Europeans have been continuing to progress and become a higher scale type of persons there. I'm not going to reply to that, Cap. Sorry. So I think the concept that the Europeans, and again, the article kind of has that down look on any solo that is not European, that they are just brutish. They have no grace. They have no elegance. And
well, I mean, late 80s, early 90s, with the post-punk and nouveau music scenes, I think the Europeans were just seen as so much more stylish at the time than Americans. I think that's what just carried over, like their sense of fashion and all that. I mean, yeah, a lot of Europe, it was fairly conflicted, but yeah, I really want to say it just comes down to basic fashion trends at the time. And you see it in a lot of the art where, especially the Nagel-inspired stuff, where everybody looks like a
fashion model.
Yeah, like a... Yeah. I'm at a loss for specific bands at the moment, but definitely some Euro-influenced...
Duran.
Yeah, Duran, Tears for Fears, the big shoulder pad art fashion style that just
the high fashion
kind of defined Europe
at that time, and how some bands got towards that. Not necessarily glam rock, but just a definite
new wave
fashion.
It's very new wave. Some Sisters of Mercy type stuff. Honestly, when I think of European fashion, I can't help but think of when the Griswolds go shopping in National Lampoon's European Vacation, and they all are wearing these giant shoulder padded suits and stuff.
Yep. And again, at the end of this article, it gives you some rules in which you would create a Euro solo. What you would do with them, some of the different skills, add +3 to any skills of your choice. So they were kind of a beefed up type of solo to kind of give them that upper edge on other non-Euro solos, as it were.
I mean, and again, I think at the end of the day, they're just trying to really push forward the idea that a good solo is somebody who can blend in and not, who can get into a club, who can stand next to your corporate executive without looking like some kind of Rambo monstrosity.
Right. And oftentimes that'll off-put a person, right? So if I'm looking at two corps, okay, they're going to be chumps. I'm going to be able to take them out. However, one of them is a Euro solo who's probably, twice as better at me in hand-to-hand combat, and I decide to go and mess with them.
Top of the line gear, top of the line fashion. He's like style. and substance.
Yep.
Cow.
So, it's a good read to understand what a Euro Solo is. I mean, it's 3-4 pages of content and fluff. So, definitely go read. Again, next we have an ad with one of my players' main go-tos, which is the speeding bullet legs.
Absolutely. I mean, the other stuff is on the page is just kind of, it's just kind of fun. It's more stuff you see on NPCs, but the speeding bullet legs, man, if you don't have this or Corvette's, if this or Corvette Cyber Legs don't make it to at least one of your characters, I don't know that you're playing the game right.
Exactly. So my players would often, if I gave them points to distribute amongst their stats, movement allowance would be a dump stat. And then they would just make sure that they can get speeding bullet.
I mean, it's one of those. It's one of the basic concepts of cybernetics that have been in everybody's subconscious since the $6 million man came out. Like, everybody wants to run really fast. Everybody wants to jump really high. Like, these are the core bionics that everybody was familiar with.
Yep. And the one thing that really didn't talk about whether or not these were the 2500 was for the option, or did it include the legs themselves? Right? This cyber leg package. How did you play them? Were the legs included in that price for you? I know for me they were.
The prices of the early supplements and especially Cyber were so all over the place. Since they didn't specify, we just went ahead and said, yeah, that's the whole package. Because they would require, like, if you got speeding bullet legs, with the exception of maybe some minor options here and there, that was it. That was what your legs were. You couldn't combine them with like hydraulic rams or anything like that. So for us, it was just the total package. And it was a choice, like I said, between this and, like, this just gives you a flat 16 movement allowance and can let you jump up to 10 meters, whereas the later Corvette Cyber Legs, they gave you up to a plus 8 movement allowance, which, depending on whether you made MA your dump stat or not, could be the better option.
Yep.
But they also, like, replaced your spine and all sorts of shit, so it was always a trade-off.
Very true. The other little knick-knack that my players will also look to buy is the boostware, which actually gives you a flat +1 to your reflex. Which was always envious, because that's how you boost yourself to. And again, you know, back in 2013, boosterware actually added to your reflex, not just your initiative. So that's why that carryover from the chart, where if you dodge with a reflex greater than 12, you could actually get with the 2013 rules, or 2013 rules.
Yeah, you could get a superhuman stat. I mean, really, reflex, movement allowance, you can only get superhuman stats with the physical stats. Reflex, movement allowance, and body. The mental stats you couldn't, like, very late in the game, with some of the cyber generation stuff, they started, like, saying, hey, okay, well, here's something to boost your intelligence, but I never really made that part of my game outside of, like, genetic experimentation.
Well, the cyberware that boosted your brain, it had some pretty bad effects. I think it was like...
Yeah, it wasn't something that players really...
A 10% chance you become a vegetable for X amount of time. was not always great. Because I had a player who was like, "Ooh," because he saw it on my master data sheet. He's like, "Oh, +1." And of course, he didn't know about the source or actually read it. And I was like, "Oh, you got this. So you're willing to take a 10% chance that you'll be a vegetable?" He's like, "Wait, what?" I'm like, "Yeah."
Yeah, the ref book is great, but the actual reference information at the end of every entry is vitally important. Like, you need to read that stuff. You need to research it yourself.
Yep. So, moving along, we get into an article called "The State of Corporate Security, Penetration and Defense." So this article actually gets into how corporations kind of do security within a building. So it's definitely a good read for any referee. Well, it talks about Arasaka specifically, but there's also a lot of Arasaka facilities talked about in various books that you can check out. This one actually goes in a little detail of like why they do it. I think the security is probably a little more advanced than what they have here for your games, but it's at least a start from back in the 90s and how you did it.
It's very interesting. The net security layout they give is so far removed from like the crossword puzzle net layouts you would see in later supplements.
Well, again, this is 2013, so this is how. And if you guys get this book, you would actually see that kind of looks like Cyberpunk Red a little, and how the networks work. Right, you have branches, and going off into a branch, you go into a different node, and follow it through. Granted that it's a mammoth.
Yeah, there's
layout.
so much there. Like,
So you might have to.
It's a flowchart for frustration right there.
So you would just carve this up into the various net nodes of, okay, this controls the cameras, this controls the workstations, this one, and cut up this diagram into the little bits and pieces for your facility.
It's always interesting to me to see like how the progression of the various aspects of the game. We've also got a bit of corporate security layout, and to be honest, this kind of thing was like it's battle maps and floor plans and stuff are so prevalent now, but back then, modern floor maps for shit like this was so rare.
Yep.
Like we're talking before Shadowrun was really a thing. 2013 was like this was kind of it. This was all you could get. Some of the Marvel superhero supplements had some stuff, and some of the DC, like the superhero games, had it, and the James Bond game
Bless you.
had really great. Thank you. The James Bond game had really great floor plans and battle maps for the time. Like none of them would hold up today, just because they're not to scale with anything. But yeah, back then this stuff was so rare.
Yep. And I think this is the map that Mike Pondsmith takes as credit for art, which is good.
Yeah, it's definitely a good floor plan. But yeah, I think you're right. I think it's this kind of stuff and the diagrams that are Mike's artistic contributions. I don't know.
So moving along, and I don't think we're going to get to Solo 2 from going through all these chapters. I didn't think this book was that big, but I mean, it's 82 pages, and we're only getting halfway through.
We're only halfway through.
Yeah.
I mean, this next chapter is
Bubba and
It's just them
JT.
talking about one of their guns. Like with the cyberpunk redneck NPCs that they created. The most impressive thing to me about this is it's like photographs, and they actually created a prop gun for it.
Yep.
And it's a pretty good looking prop. I mean, it's kind of weird seeing as how there's no visible like magazine or anything like that. Like you're not really sure how the gun is supposed to work, but it's nice that they created a real life prop and then took photographs of it.
Well, then, one of the pictures also shows his plugs that he uses for a smart gun.
Yeah, that was a nice touch too.
But it's definitely a great article, because I've seen this in various communities in which they start debating about the pros and cons of the various ammunitions and guns. And to me, I've seen this conversation not just here, but in other places.
Oh, every fucking gun magazine of the 80s. Like, this is... Yeah. Now, they also give photographs for the Fabric of the Arms, which is a much more realistic-looking weapon, and it was a bullpup, which, in the 90s, or late 80s, early 90s, were still fairly uncommon.
They were, and everyone thought, oh, this is going to be the wave of the future. All guns are going to be bullpup.
I mean, that's still the way I see it in the back of my head. Like, my favorite guns in the video games are always going to be bullpups. Just because of this influence. Yeah. I don't know how they created this gun. This is a much more realistic take. I don't know. This is a weird prop.
Yeah, I'm wondering if they took like a squirt gun and like did some modifications of a squirt gun. But that butt, that does not look like any squirt gun I've ever seen.
No, that looks almost like a M60 butt.
Yeah.
The center section, that's obviously like some kind of smoothed out H&K.
Yep.
Like an MP5.
Yeah.
Like maybe very early Photoshop.
If so, no, because he's holding it. He's holding it in the other pictures. So it is a prop.
Oh, yeah, no, it's something they had to create. Yeah, no, it's not Photoshop.
So.
Huh. We should ask Mike about that sometime, or anybody who was involved in the book.
Yeah. So again, there's a lot of talk in this article. It's the longest article in this book. And they also talk about polymer one-shots, and I think this is where polymer one-shots really got a debut of what they wore and why you use them.
Oh my God. We finally have an art credit for Mike Pondsmith with the polymer one-shots.
Oh, he did those too? Yes, he did.
It's crazy that I never noticed that before now. I have looked through this book thousands of times, and it just never clicked. Mystery solved.
And you can tell it's a computer-generated thing because you can kind of see the pixelation.
I don't know if it's computer. I don't think it's computer generated.
Maybe because I'm looking at it on my computer.
This definitely looks hand drawn to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, neat. Okay.
There you go. He drew the polymer 9s. Then in the next section you have Bubba scope notes. The one contention thing is that cot. My players often would say, okay, that gives me a +3 to my cyber gun +2 plus my cyber eye gives me a +6. to my weapon.
Yeah.
And I'm going to strap that on something that has a weapon accuracy of +2, which means I get a +8. Which basically means that takes care of the called shots for small targets.
Pretty much. Takes care of both called shots and everything else you wanna throw at the player.
Yeah, so
Um,
again, I don't know if the COT was supposed to be like in addition to the cyber gun, like instead of a +2 you get a +3.
yeah.
But
I think they kind of walk that back later.
yeah.
Never specifically, but yeah, they definitely move away from this.
So the next page we have some more weapons, more rifles.
Yep, I would be willing to bet those are also done by Mike. They seem to be in the same style.
Yeah, I would not use a ninja. Just because the D6 damage is...
Yeah, what's the point?
Exactly. What is the point?
Well, in 2013, what was the point? With Interlock Unlimited, we actually made steps to make that something that could be effective with like armor degradation rules and whatnot. If you throw 100 rounds of even 22 caliber at something, it's going to have an effect.
It is. But yeah, it's kind of like was it from Chrome 1, that mini-gat?
Yeah.
Except you're throwing 100 rounds in one turn. Some insane rate of fire that thing had.
Yeah, it was. I mean, that the mini-gat is actually what led me to create the armor degradation rules and have them be effective. Because if you hit something that many times, like I said, it's going to have an effect. You don't need to get tricksy with it. Like, that's just the way guns work.
Well, I know you say that, but that shootout in LA back in the early 2000s with those two gun robbers, I mean, how many rounds did they take before they started pulling out the bigger guns and finally did some headshots on those guys?
I mean, they were wearing like freaking like bomb disposal outfits. They were
sure. They were wearing Metal Gear, really.
They were wearing, yeah, they were wearing Metal Gear for all intents and purposes. They were armored from head to toe with like heavy armor. Like, one of the reasons the firefight took so long is because they had no chance of escaping, because they couldn't move at anything faster than like a slow walk.
Yeah.
So while they had this big long standoff where they were taking round after round, they couldn't get to any of their escape vehicles because they couldn't walk fast enough.
Yeah.
In game terms, they had like a -5 to their movement allowance, and -5 encumbrance value. See, real world stuff. There we go.
But yeah, that was a crazy situation there.
Yeah, I remember watching that on the news as it was happening. It was like, holy fucking shit.
Yeah, kids, don't do that at home. That wasn't a lesson to be learned from, because eventually the cops did get the proper munitions and did take those guys out.
I mean, they had to go basically like commandeer the gun store down the street because their own stuff wasn't
and it's a
adequate.
Yeah, and nowadays that's not the same. That's not the situation.
Yeah, no. In fact, that was probably the direct catalyst for the excuse for militarization of the police.
That and crack.
That, That and crack. But that is a long discussion for another time.
So, next story we have is the first corporate war. So, they spend quite a few pages discussing it, what was involved, how it evolved. It gives you timelines and places and all the situations that were happening. So it was a war that happened between Orbital Air and EBM, who are EBM I like to use quite a bit in a few of my games.
I like to use Orbital Air.
Well, I'm about to use Orbital Air in my future campaign.
I liked this section. I like the detail of. This is the first time they really go into detail of how corporations can actually be more powerful than the established militaries and whatnot. With now, granted, they get smacked down hard, but it kind of lends credence to how powerful corporations have become by the time of the Cyberpunk timeline.
Yep. And I think this is the kind of article I think you were looking for the Southam War, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's a good read.
It all gets folded in. Any little bit of information I can find.
Yep. The next chapter we have is the various secret services or spy organizations for the various not corporates, but actually government, like the CIA, who is a combination of the FBI, what do they say, the NSC, the DEA, I thought the NSA. Interpol, Mossad, KGB.
I mean,
of course, the KGB doesn't exist
honestly,
anymore. Kinda, supposedly.
When I tell people that I've run several like high-level espionage campaigns in the vein of like James Bond or the Bourne Identity, or the Jason Bourne stuff, like people look at me weird, like, "What are you doing running that in Cyberpunk 2020?" And I'm all like, "Dude, it's been there since the start."
Yep.
Like, Cyberpunk lends itself very well to this kind of stuff, as evidenced by Ghost in the Shell.
Yes. And I think even the interlock system really has a lot of depth in which it can be applied to, right? Like even when we were talking with Seth and how he took your the IU, right, and tried to use it for fantasy campaigns.
Interlock works really well for any human-based system.
Yep.
It works better than really anything else that I've ever come across. It really takes some doing to start adding the fantastical effects. But if you look at it as humans as your base, it really does it better than anything else because it allows for I've talked about the sense of drama before, and yeah, that's just where its strength lies.
Well, I mean, even with non-human, you kind of got into the whole concept of animals having more wound boxes per category, which kind of expanded how deadly, bigger beasts can be.
Well, yeah, because, a whale is going to take some damage unless you're on a speedboat into it.
But yeah, this one...
Sorry, that was the boys reference for anybody paying attention.
Yeah. But this article goes into the various government societies. I actually need to read Interpol because they are up in space quite a bit. And I'm going to have to use this for my campaign, so I'm glad I uncovered this and went back and read this.
I mean, really, all the intelligence agencies are going to be active in space, and anytime I've tried to run an espionage campaign, at some point or another, they end up on Crystal Palace just because that's where like the deals get made, the
Well,
high dollar.
true, but the ESA and the EEC are basically own 90% of space. It even referenced how every single transfer station in space has an Interpol agent in it. So,
Well, yeah, that's just how that works.
yeah, so I think you're right that there's going to be, the Russians and the United States, and there's only like four agencies, which is the Russians, the Americans, the EEC, and Mossad. President.
And I mean, Cyberpunk was coming out as a genre just as like the Star Wars, the like real life Ronald Reagan Star Wars space program was really like hitting its peak.
Yep.
So we had all these defense satellites that we kept hearing about, and these super secret space installations that they were talking about.
Yep. So definitely come read it. It actually gives some stats and how to roll up a agent of our Secret Service. What skills they would have, what cyberware they would have, what kind of hardware they would be using. So definitely a good read. And then I believe this is the final chapter, there's one more chapter I think after this. This chapter is the world situation and kind of goes through the various locations in 2013 and the locations around the world that have hotspots that solos could find to work in. Yep.
Again, this was supremely useful to me in both the Conflict Africa and the Conflict South America source books I made. In fact, if it weren't for these, I probably would never have had the inspiration to do them.
Yep. So it's kind of a lot of hooks, similar to the screen sheets.
Yep.
Which you have.
They give you the size of the conflicts. Yep.
And then it's up to you to flesh it all out.
The next chapter was supremely useful in the early days because it's the first time you see vehicles combat fleshed out.
Yep.
It's very simple and basic, but it follows completely in line with Interlock, and it doesn't ever feel out of place. But with things like AVs and car chases, like this was really the only tool you had for a long time to run those scenarios.
The basic book had some simple,
really, really simple
car chases prior to Maximum Metal. Even Maximum Metal, I think those rules were even a little more simplistic than these.
Yeah, in some regards, they were. It was an expansion of this that kind of simplified it a little bit, but at the same time, through so many different weapons and vehicles that. Yeah, but I mean, Maximum Metal didn't come out till much later.
Yeah, 97, 90. It was late.
It wasn't that late. It was
late.
I want to say it was 94, 95. Yeah.
I know it came out
some more
after
Ruggles,
quite a lot.
Inspired art with the Lamborghini.
Yeah, because when I was working on my master list for vehicles, just the amount of vehicles that just didn't have Maximum Metal stats.
Yeah, it was a pain in those early days. I think the most useful part of this is the damage location tables for vehicles.
Maximum Metal, copyrighted 2022 or 2002. Sorry, not 2022.
I mean, Maximum Metal came out a long time before that.
That's not what this.
If you,
I have it right in front of me, and I'm looking at it, and it says copyrighted 2002.
Well, I'm assuming that that's probably a reprint.
Maybe.
I definitely had it when I was in Kansas City, and I moved out of Kansas City in '96.
Maybe it was again, this is a PDF version from DriveThru. But I don't think.
Yeah, I'm assuming that that's when DriveThru released it. Not.
I don't think DriveThru was around in 2002.
Then yeah, I'm definitely assuming it's a reprint. I know that it came.
I'll have to pull out my actual paper copy. All right. Well, we'll see. That's for future us to figure out. And then at the end, well, right before the end, you have the follow up to the Soviet article, because again, that's what.
1993. That's when Maximum Metal came out.
Huh. Where'd the DriveThru? Why the DriveThru edition says 2002?
That is odd. That is odd.
Misprinting, maybe? I don't know.
Like I said, I'm assuming that whatever scan that is from a reprint.
True. Probably. And then finally you have the hiring hole, which is basically job postings that you would normally see in like any of the magazines from the 90s, in which you would have classifieds, as it were, for various jobs.
And it's just more adventure hooks.
Yep.
And then the last page is ruler rep updates.
That's in
at least
in the printed copy.
In reprints, in the printed copy.
You have to actually go to R. Talsorian's site, and they have a DLC around the errata for this, which is a definite must. I don't think it's too many things they actually really fixed. Just a few little typos that they went through. And that covers Solo Fortune 1. And I don't think we got... If Solo Fortune 1, which was 82 pages, took us this amount of time, I don't think we're going to finish Solo 2 in the next 20 minutes. So I think we're going to have to hold off on Solo Fortune 2 till another future episode.
Yeah, that gives us something to talk about next episode, or the episode after that, or at some point. Yeah. It's weird to me that it took us this long to get through this book, because it's not one of the larger source books.
It's not, but we kind of always go off on little tangents for the various things and talk about
very, very true
different topics while we're talking about the main thing.
We do a lot of talking about how, aspects of the source book have impacted our own games and our own projects. So.
Yep. And then comparing real life situations, like, how armor can be very, very useful against small caliber weapons.
Well, I mean, in the past, when we've done these original and then updated versions, we've been able to get through both source books at once, like Near Orbit and Deep Space, because most of Near Orbit was just reprinted into Deep Space, so there wasn't the need to go into the first source book as much. But this, while some of this gets reprinted in Solo of Fortune 2, there's so much more original material that it's going to take us a whole nother episode to really do Solo of Fortune 2 justice.
Yeah, so future content. I think it'll be probably another year or two before we get through all these books and start. Hopefully by then we'll start doing more red books as more of them come out. I got my version of Tales from the Red. Like I said, I'm rereading it. I might actually run a couple of the scenarios as one-shots just to play around with them and use them. So definitely want to
setting
test
aside
those
some
out.
money for it right now for that, and I also want to get a physical copy of Interface.
Yep. Also,
Interface Red.
yes. Always have to have physical copies of things. The other thing is, I actually got my pledge manager for the Cyberpunk 2077 board game. So,
Man, that looks.
yes. So I'm actually going to be dealing with that, and that's going to eventually hopefully come out. Hopefully we'll not be at any wars, or hopefully China will, the COVID crisis will have ended very soon, and we can get back to normal with normal freight coming back in, and no more dystopian future happening, so I can actually hold that game in my hands, but we'll see.
It would be nice. It would be nice if things get a little bit better. Yeah.
Yeah, it can't all be bad, right? Right? Right?
Yeah. Yeah. Can't rain all the time.
Well, unless you're in London.
Or Seattle.
Or Seattle, yeah. Yeah, that
Or Night City, as it were.
City. Well, the problem with Night City is you do not want to be caught out in the rain up there. Alright, so I guess that's about it. So I think we can wrap up. So again, I am Cybersmily. You can go visit my site at cybersmily.net. That's Cybersmily without the second E. There you can find a bunch of gaming utilities for Cyberpunk 2020, for Cyberpunk Red. I have some map downloads. I actually, as I said, I did a launch today, so I added a few maps to that section. I also posted a short story that I've also posted on a couple of Discord servers. Love to get some feedback on that story. It's about one of my first Cyberpunk characters, and kind of an NPC I've used quite a bit. So I'd like to hear from that. You can check me out on my own Discord server, Cybersmily's Datafort. There's a link on my site, so go to my site, you'll be able to get to there. I'm also on almost every single other Cyberpunk site that every Cyberpunk Discord server there is in Discord, so I am there, I'm listening, or you can hit me up directly on Discord at Cybersmily. I think I'm the only Cybersmily, but I never know. Also, I cruise the couple of Reddit threads as well. I post there too. Yeah, that's about it from my side.
I am Wisdom. You can find my stuff at Datafortress202, where I just have, in addition to my own numerous source books and gear books and rules that I've posted, I also have an archive of like all the net's greatest utilities and source books for Cyberpunk, adventures, anything you could want, from all the long dead sites, as much as I could have grabbed.
Yep.
You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Discord, but I'm slow to answer. You can get a hold of me directly through my email, which is readily available on my site. You can get a hold of me Again, through Facebook. If you have questions directly for me on Discord, I'll get around to those eventually. But yeah, we are very glad for any support and any enjoyment anyone finds from us.
And we also like to thank Rob over on Cybernation Uncensored for hosting us here on Twitch. Also posting our older episodes over on his YouTube channel. Also part of his Discord server as well. And I know Capricious is here, so he has a lot of live plays that you definitely should go check out.
His live plays are top quality. I also want to thank him for continuously posting necessary links and to our various sites and articles. Thanks, Cap.
Yes, definitely. And definitely go check out Cyber Nation Uncensored's YouTube. He has quite a few of live plays for various games, not just for Cyberpunk Red, that not only Capricious runs, but also Rob runs, but they also have Fallouts, Dune, and a few other games, so go check them out. Definitely a plus. So, all right, I think that's about it, and kind of ends our little episode. So, and
thanks everybody for tuning in.
Yeah, and check us out on the first Wednesday of the month and the third Wednesday of the month again. So, adios.
Well, see you soon.
Cybernation Uncensored.